Hey there, Jeff Lopez again with Crosspoint Church talking to you about the Drawing Near to God ministry. In this video, we're going to get into great detail on the markup and some of how we will mark up our text looking for various things. And so we're going to be working down a whole series of connector words and different things like that. So this video is a little bit longer, but it'll give you a lot more detail on how it is we're going to be looking at the scripture, and it will help you in participating with the study. Thanks for tuning in. So, we are going to be marking up the text, and so I want to walk through with you briefly how we're going to do this. First, we're going to look for action words or verbs, and we're going to identify actions because this helps us to see and understand what's going on in the passage, regardless of the type of literature. So we're looking for action words, and when we see actions taken by man, we will underline them in red, as you see the legend off to the right-hand side of the slide there. When we have actions taken by God, we'll underline them in purple. And if there's actions taken by anybody else, maybe it's demonic or who knows, but any other actions that's not by mankind or not by God, then we could perhaps underline those in black. I don't have the black on the legend. So how that looks then, we're going to look at Proverbs 2, 1-2 then. So I'm going to go ahead and underline some man actions. Here is an action of receiving. So I'm going to say receive, and here is treasuring. I'm going to say treasure up. So, and here's making. Here is inclining. So we've got a few different verbs that are actions done by man here. And so we've highlighted them with red, and we can start to talk about, okay, so here's some actions that are being done. There's a receiving, there's a treasuring, there's a making my ear attentive to wisdom, there's an inclining my heart to understanding. So there's actions that are being taken, and so we'll identify those. And next, connector words. Connector words are often small but important words that help us to see and understand the relationship between words, phrases, and ideas. These are conjunctions is the name for it. And some categories of these connector words are going to be progression, how we see something move towards some type of climax. Alternative, where there are options or different things that could potentially happen. We will see reasons or a ground, something that a reason or a supporting ground, a foundation behind something. Or inference, where something leads to something else. Or where there's a result of some type, an action has a result. Or it could be a purpose, where an action is done for a purpose. It doesn't just have a natural result, but it's actually done for a purpose. Or it could be conditional, where there's something is depending on something else. Could be an explanation, where there's just more information given. It could be a manner, or like a way in which something is being done. It could be a comparison that's being made. We could have a positive negative contrast that we're looking at. There could be a question and answer. Or the final one is concessive, which basically means there's some sort of contrary statement made and some lesson in this contrary statement. So first of all, progression. Looking at progression, each proposition or statement moves further towards a climax. And the connector words that are used to indicate that are things like then, and, moreover, or furthermore. For an example here in Mark 4:28, I'm going to make select my orange shape here so that I can pick something that is a progression. So we have first, so I'm going to put my orange box around a connector word first, the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. So we have a progression that's being seen here. The earth produces by itself first the blade, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. So this progression of growth from just a blade showing up to a grain actually being there in the ear of corn. So you've got a progression that's happening. And so our connector words, we identify them just like that, and that's how progression would show itself. Another type would be alternative. Each idea expresses a different possibility. And the conjunctions here could be words like or, but, while, on the other hand. And so if we're looking at Matthew 11:3 and I'm asking for connector words, who sees some connector words in here, and we're looking at this, we could say, all right, that or right there is expressing an alternative. And he said to him, are you the one who is to come, or shall we look for another? So are we supposed to be expecting you, or are we supposed to be expecting someone else? Are you the one, or is there another one? So there's these alternatives, there's different possibilities being presented there. Or it might be reason or ground, and this would be a statement followed by the reason. So some conjunctions or connector words that lead us to see that are the words for, or because, or since. And in this example of Matthew 5:3, we read, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And if I'm asking for any connector words, you can see, well, I see a ground or a reason right here in the word for. And so the poor are blessed in spirit because, or for, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So we have a reason that they are blessed in spirit. We have a grounding, we have a foundation underneath it. Or a connector word could be used for inference, a statement that is preceded by the argument or the reason. So words used then would be things like therefore or accordingly. And an example we have in 1 Peter 4:7, it says, the end of all things is at hand, therefore be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. So the connector word we have here is therefore. So we've got an inference where it says the end of all things at hand. And so then the meaning that's inferred from that is that we should be self-controlled, sober-minded for the sake of our prayers. And the word that helps us see that what the author intended was for us to infer that is the word therefore. Next we have a result. Result would be an action and a consequence or result. So words that could indicate that would be words like, or phrases like, so that, with the result, that. And you'll notice that so that and that kind of appear in a few of these. And so it's going to take context for us to truly understand even how a connector word is being used. But so here in this example of Matthew 8:24, the text says, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. So the result we can see here, I'll put a orange box around so that. So the result, the storm came up, and the result was that the boat was being swamped by the waves. So that points out for us an action and then a result. And so that gives us a discussion point. Or it could be a purpose. You could have an action and then its intended result. Not just a result, but an intentional result. So this could be words like, or phrases like, in order that, so that, or lest. So an example, Colossians 2:4, I say this in order that no one may delude you with plausible arguments. So here we have something is being said, and it's being said for a purpose. That purpose is so that, or in order that, no one may delude you with plausible arguments. Another type of connector word would be conditional statement, something potential that is contingent upon something else. So the words that introduce this to us would be if, blah, 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 then, an if-then statement, or provided that, or the word except, or unless. So here's Exodus 21:23. It says, but if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life. So we're looking for the conditional statement, and we have an if, we have a then. So if we spot this if then we know we've got something conditional. And so one thing is contingent upon another. So there will be life to be paid But when is that? Well, it's if there is harm. If there is harm, then you shall pay life for life. Now, another type is temporal, or it's like a time thing. It gives the occasion when something is true or can occur. So the words that can be used there would be when, whenever, after, before. Matthew 6:16 as an example says, "And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, and their fasting, or that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward." So I'm going to actually go ahead and we've got another connector word in. Oops, I'm highlighting the wrong word. I meant to put it right there. So, but our focus right now is the when up here because that's our temporal when. So this is the occasion upon which these instructions. The occasion is when you're fasting, follow these instructions. All right. Next, we have locative, and this is a place where something is true or can occur. So the words that help us see this are words like where or wherever. Here in Ruth 1:16 it says, "But Ruth said, 'Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.'" So we have where. Where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. And explanation. Next, explanation. Something clarifying another statement. Words that are used there could be "that is" or "in other words." So Romans chapter 4 verses 7 to 8 as an example here. We see, "Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord will not count his sin." So looking for a connector word in here, what they've done is they've used this right here is our connector. Something clarifying. Blessed are those whose lawless deeds are forgiven and whose sins are covered. And then that semicolon basically says, in other words, or that is, let me explain that better. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord doesn't count his sin. Next, manner. Connector words that indicate manner. They indicate the way or manner something is carried out. Some words that could be accomplishing that are in that, or by, or when we use verbs like adjectives, and they call those participles. So here's Acts 14:17. It says, "Yet he did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness." Here, looking for our connector words. Yet he did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. So the manner in which he did good was by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. So it's a manner in which this good is being done. Next, we have comparison. This clarifies something by showing what it is like. So the words that can be used there are as, even as this, so that, like, or just as. So here in 1 Corinthians 11:1, we have, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." So an example or a comparison is being made. "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ," comparing how you should be imitating Christ like he is imitating Christ, that comparison there. You could have connector words that create positive, negative, a contrast with one thing being denied and the other thing being enforced or promoted. So commonly used there is the not this, but that, not but. So Ephesians 5:17 says, "Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." So don't do this one thing. So we have do not, and then but. So those two combined together basically say, don't do this one, but do that one. This one is denied, the other one is enforced. Do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And so you have a positive, negative there. You could have a question and answer. So whenever we see a question mark, if that is followed with an actual answer, then we can think about what's being said there. And so a connector word we can say is just the fact that, hey, I got a question mark right there. And then we can say, okay, is that question answered? What is it? What is the message in this Q&A going back and forth? Or finally, a concessive, something that stands, something that is true, or something that is that holds despite a contrary statement. So words that help us here would be although, though, yet, nevertheless, but, or however. So in 2 Peter 1:12, the example says, therefore I intend always to remind you of these qualities, though you know them and are established in the truth that you have. So the though, so he's saying, I intend to remind you of these things, but you already know them. So this contrary thing is that you already know these things, but still, I'm going to keep reminding you. So there's this concessive statement that is in there, and so even though you already know these things, he's going to keep reminding you. And so that's a connector. The word there is a concessive. So those are our connector words. Next, we're going to look for important words or key words. And so I'm going to select my green color here so that I can give you the example. And so these are words or phrases that contribute to the main idea or the theme. They lead us to important observations or questions. And we'll use a jagged green, lime green box to accomplish this. In the example, we've got Proverbs 2:5-6 says, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So maybe some important words or phrases here can be, for example, the fear of the Lord. So if I put a box around that, I might also say the knowledge of God. This could also be an important thing. Maybe wisdom here and how wisdom is being used is going to be important for us. And maybe even just this one down here, knowledge and understanding. So we can put sort of jagged green boxes around important words or key words that we think are really feeding into the meaning of what's being said. And then we can talk about those. Maybe we define them. Maybe we pull out a Bible dictionary or an English dictionary and just talk over what the words or the terms or the phrase means and how it feeds into the meaning of what we're looking at. Next are repeated words. We'll use a light blue circle that we'll put around repeated words, and this helps us to see emphasis or big ideas. So here with Proverbs 2:5-6, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding again. So some repeated words. We've got this concept of understand here that comes up again down here. I've got knowledge here. It comes up again down here. Oh, and I just realized I left it jagged, so it's giving me that little jagged shape, but that doesn't matter. So anyhow, I started indicating, well, what are the words that are repeating themselves, and how does that repetition inform us as we start thinking about this? And so we can even use some different colors when we have multiple words that are repeating so that we can tell the difference between one repeating series, like maybe I'll make this one a brown color. So maybe we'll do something like that where, oops, I mixed it up, didn't I? So we'll have one color one way and one color the other way so that we can keep straight the connections that we're seeing or the repeated words that we're seeing like that. Next, character or category. What we'll do is we'll use a yellow star to indicate a character or category that we see. And so we can do something like this, where we can draw a little yellow star somewhere, and we're going to say the upright is a category. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked, there's another category. I'm going to copy and paste that, and we'll put the wicked right there. But the wicked, I'm going to make these smaller, will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. So these characters that occur, or categories of people or of things, can help us understand the meaning of the text. So there's something going on with this group or this category called the upright, and there's something else going on with this group or category called the wicked, and we could talk about the difference between those. Promises or commands, we will look for promises or commands, and we can use a blue letter P for promises or a letter C for commands. And so we'll say a promise here is that the upright are going to inhabit the land. Well, and here's another promise, is that, well, the wicked aren't. So there's a couple of things that we can put a P next to those, or if there's commands, we could put a C next to something. And so we can identify promises and commands that'll help us know about how it is we're supposed to apply something. Shifts or divisions that occur. What we'll do is we can draw lines in our text. So some shifts or divisions could be based on shifts in the speaker, could be shifts on the audience or the setting or the focus or the time, like it's maybe present tense, it switched to future tense, or past tense switches to present tense, or it could be changes in outcomes. And we'll do something like this. Like here we had an if-then, and so I'm going to separate that if-then with a line like that. And we already did this earlier, but I'll go ahead and show how probably what we would need to do is we'll have an orange box around this one, and as a connector, and then another connector there. I'm going to fix the color of my line so it keeps it separate. So there we've got a division created by the concept of this if this, then that scenario, and so I created division there, for example. So shifts or divisions. Finally, connected ideas. Connected ideas will be one of the last things that we do typically, and in that case we'll basically use arrows to connect things, and so we'll use those to identify where we have ideas that we're following, conclusions that we're drawing. So something like this, where I might say, if this, then that. So we're noticing this if, then, and so I'm drawing an arrow to get to that. And so we'll have multiple ways that we might mark up the text. We'll use this markup in order to walk through it and understand it together, and to give us a way to talk about it. It just helps us to look carefully at it. Well, I hope you tune in for the next video, which will be a sample markup taken from Proverbs chapter 2, and I'll see you Tuesday night.